Welcome to Three Righteous Mamas. We are a podcast that is on a mission to transform our country. We tell the stories that matter, celebrate the power and hope of pissed off mamas who are building a better future for all of our children. I'm Cristina Sensun Ramirez.
I'm Muna Husseini.
And I'm Martha Pinkoffs.
And we're so excited to have you all here with us. I want to remind you all to please subscribe, write us a
note.
No, it was a review. Okay. Please, I want to ask you all to subscribe and write us a review. Let us know what you're thinking about this podcast and share it with others. So we're really excited. As people know, there is a change coming to Washington, D.C., and hopefully we're going to be able to enact what we're calling the Righteous Mama Agenda. We're going to be talking to Wendy Davis about that righteous agenda, including maternity leave, paternity leave, universal childcare, and how we make sure that working moms everywhere have the things they need to be successful and take care of their kids. But before we get down to that, I'm really excited to talk to you two about my little guy, Santi. He just started school last week.
First time? First day?
First day. Yeah, can I tell you all about it? I want to get your advice a little bit about how to keep him going.
Kind of a rite of passage right there.
Yeah, it's so exciting. My favorite thing, can I just say before I tell you about his day, is just how their backpacks, when they're starting out, are bigger than they are. Right? Yes. So we packed his he's going to pre-K. It's a really cool program. Santi speaks Spanish and English, but it's all in Spanish. And he's just in a class with two other little girls. And it was also a trial to even figure out if we would send him with COVID, but I just couldn't take having him at home anymore while we were working every day. There was just too much cartoons, and I felt guilty about sending him. I felt guilty about having him here and watching too much TV. It was like a no-win situation. But in the end, we decided that there were strong enough safety protocols, and with a vaccine on the way, we felt good about sending him, which is, everyone has to decide on themselves. But it was so cute. He packed up his backpack. We went to the thrift store and he picked out a backpack. He picked a Lightning McQueen backpack, and then he packed it with everything he thought he would need, which was a stuffed animal and just race cars for the day.
The essentials.
Yeah, the essentials. And we got there and he was off. He was racing towards the door. He greeted everyone. The crossing guards, we had to go by two of them. And he goes, "Good morning. I'm Santiago. I'm here for school." I was like, oh my God, you're too precious. So cute. So cute. And it was really fun sending him off. Half-day program when I picked him up. Next day we took him and he was clawing the car seat and being like, "I'm not going." It was really fun for one day. What do you mean we have to go every day? So now I'm need your all's advice. I want to know what you did did you have this problem? Really excited first day, second day, not so much.
Not so much.
Do you want to go first, Martha, or should I?
You go for it.
So I'm really glad that you had a good first day. I did not have a good first day. I did not have a good first 2 weeks. And I would literally drop my kid off and then bawl in the car because I would have to hand off my child who was clawing me to someone who just then took them inside. And I felt like the worst human being on the face of the earth. But you know what I realized? If you do it in a clean way, it actually helps your kid turn the corner faster, right? Just to be like, this is what we're doing. I'm going to drop you off. I love you. Smile because if you're crying while they're crying and then you drop them off, that's traumatic for them too. Mm-hmm. But if I had to do over again, I think the thing I would have done to give me more comfort was to build trust with the childcare provider, because I was also dropping my kid off with someone I did not know. And so it made me feel super uncomfortable that I'm leaving my kid bawling and it's with someone I don't know. I felt like I was crazy. And so we ended up changing our childcare place. And one of the things that the second place did was take pictures and share them all day long. And way back in the day before Instagram, it was on a website, but now the same place does it on Instagram. So it's instant, but there's places that have live camera and whatever. And so just making sure you have that connection and trust, and that you're not just like sending your kid off into some black hole, or not that I'm saying you would do that, but I think
it's like, to be clear, it seemed like an okay institution.
I'm just saying, I just know it made me feel a lot better, but yeah, hopefully that helps you.
I have to say that Joe and I were the only ones that cried on the first day of drop off, but like,
your kids were like, see ya, mom, you're embarrassing
like,
me with your tears.
Honestly, they were too little to like let us know the difference, but we were like walking, like speed walking out the front door with like little tears falling down our eyes. And I overheard Esmeralda, the woman that worked at the front desk, say to somebody else walking in, it's their first drop off. And then I would see, for the years that we were going, the kids were in that school, we would see the new parents just have that same experience of like, oh my God, I'm leaving my baby. What is this? But fortunately, our kids have always been pretty game to go to school. But I think I co-signed Muna's advice of the clean, like, hug, bye, love you, see you in a minute, and walk out.
Yeah. They were really good at the school. They were like, come on, let's go inside. There's some toys here, and just come inside. And then they knew, like, you know, this is their professional game. This is what they do, is
they're good at this.
Do that. You know, but the time I picked him up though, I didn't cry. I didn't cry because like I know he's going to a good place. Totally. And it's better for him to be there than watching cartoons at the house. Like, he's going to go play with 2 other little kids. He's going to go on the playground. They're going to do crafts, and mommy will be back in 3 hours. Like, I know you're going to be okay. You're going to start playing, and you're going to forget all about mommy. I think I'm going to cry, not when he's crying for me. I think I'm going to cry when he's like, see ya, mom, don't talk to me, as we're pulling up to school. Then I'm going to be like, oh my God, my child.
Oh man. You know? That was the opposite for me. When my kid was happy to go to school, I was so relieved. I was just like, God, go, be happy, play with your friends, do your thing. But like, my first was good. My second took a long time to get situated with school. We had tiers so much longer.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if that's a boy thing though. You know, no, people don't want to be gendered, but I do feel like the boys are the ones that like cling to their mommies.
I don't know.
Towns is more of our, I don't know. It could be.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, I'm really excited. It was fun, and I'm excited he goes back again on Tuesday. And I've gotten cool crafts already made for me. Little like marshmallow Santa men, best part. Snowmen.
That's the best part of kids school, is the art. You get so much amazing art.
One regret I have, I know you said, and I completely agree, the cutest thing about sending your kid to daycare, especially when they're little, is that the backpack is bigger than them. But one thing I regret is like when I would pick up my daughter from school, like she would literally mow down other kids running to me. And I really wish, like, we'd always be like, slow down, give the other friends.
I just pictured like this awesome song coming on as she sees you. Like, I pictured it like a movie. Yeah, no, I pictured like strong rock music where she's like, you know, like, I wonder what each of our kids' theme songs are, you know?
Ooh, that'll be a fun one to figure out.
But like, I really wish I got one of those moments on camera just to remember. Because it was so epic. Like, it didn't matter how small or big the kid was. It could have even been an adult. She just went straight through.
Tunnel vision. Mom's here.
Yeah.
Well, guys, y'all ready to talk to Wendy Davis?
Yes. Let's do this.
Okay. Listeners, I'm going to tell you about Wendy Davis, who you may well know as a Texas icon. She got my full attention on June 25th of 2013 with her 13-hour pink sneakered filibuster to protect abortion access in Texas. She has since run for governor of Texas, founded a nonprofit, Deeds Not Words, and run most recently for Congress, the congressional seat 21 in Texas. She is an absolute powerhouse, a Harvard-trained lawyer, and has a heart as big as her talent and her brain. And so let's, without further ado, talk to our friend Wendy Davis. We ask everybody the same question to start with, and that is this. How did your mom or a mother figure shape the way that you engage with the world?
So my mom actually is as polar opposite as can be of me. My father was outgoing and big and just ambitious and in his own way, and about his own thing, which was theater. But my dad taught me a lot about living your passion and making sure that you're not shying away from that. My mother, on the other hand, is and was and has always been a complete introvert. She has only a 9th grade education, and she has always been really embarrassed by that, insecure about that. And I think it was a lot of why she just kind of pulled in. Mm-hmm. And so if you met my mom, you probably would be surprised, actually, that my mom raised me because I am quite different than her. And then my younger sister, I have 3 siblings. My younger sister, who's 5 years younger than me, she's actually quite a lot more like my mom than I am. But my mother shaped me because my mom, as a single mom, had a work ethic that was, really intense and an important part of how I was shaped. When I became a single mom myself, it was my mom's work ethic, my mother's just, nose to the grindstone every day to do what you have to do for your family, that really gave me the value of believing in my own ability to do that. And of course, shaping the fact that I was willing to do whatever it took to survive.
Yeah. Wendy, when we started this podcast, one of the things we wanted to do was center mothers and children in the conversation and decision-making. And you were talking about how your mother shaped you and gave you this work ethic. And we know you were a young working mother and you had your first at 19. Can you tell our audience what that was like for you and the challenges you had? And kind of part 2 of this question is, you're in this position now where you can influence policy. How does your experience influence policy? Because let's be honest, the majority of our legislators don't share your experience being a woman or a young mother.
I've always believed that we need a diversity of people representing us because we need diverse experiences. I can't possibly understand what it was like to grow up in your skin. I can't understand what it was like to grow up in Christina's. I can't understand what it's like to be a white working man in rural Texas, right? And so we need people who come from different backgrounds to be there to inform each other's understanding. And that's why I think it's so important that we elect people from all walks of life and all experience levels. And as we know, unfortunately, people who have had struggles in their lives tend to be underrepresented in the halls of power. But for me, as a 19-year-old scared to death mother, you just do what you have to do. I was so determined when I was in high school that I was going to live a life that was different than my mom's, that I was going to get an education. I wasn't going to be left economically flat-footed. I was going to be able to take care of myself no matter what happened to me in a relationship. And then at 18, instead of determining that I was going to college to change my life, I discovered that I was pregnant. And I got married. It was a big mistake, actually, and it didn't last very long at all. And then I was a single mom and trying to figure out how was I going to live the dream that I had for myself and do the best by my young daughter. And really, for me, the greatest challenge during that time was about childcare. I have such a passion for trying to do something to solve the challenge of affordable quality childcare in this country because of my own experiences. And again, that's why we want to elect people who've had those challenges, because with passion, they pursue trying to make sure that we do something for all of the other women and men who are single parents in this country who are facing that challenge themselves. Yeah. For me, it was not only about affordability, but it was about finding it in the first place. And I was working a full-time job during the day. I was working a part-time job 4 nights a week, waiting tables. And when my daughter was 2, I started also going to a community college. And I was doing all 3 of those things. And in the middle of it, trying to find childcare for her. And that meant, you know, running from point A to point B. She would be at one childcare provider for 8 hours of the day. I would race to get her picked up, get her dropped at another childcare provider while I went to my second job. And affording it was a great challenge, but finding it was another great challenge. And that, of course, speaks to the fact that we don't pay childcare providers what they ought to earn. And we certainly don't provide subsidies to parents who can't afford to pay a childcare provider what they ought to earn for the very important job that they do.
So I'm imagining you as this young mom working her butt off, right? Just working so hard towards this future. And the sad irony, right, if you can even call it that, of so many moms that are out there working a second job so they can afford childcare, but they really wish they could be with their own child and not have to work so many hours, right? Like that's the kind of society and structure we've built. And that's also why on this podcast, it's so important for us to uplift what moms are going through. And, you know, imagining that was your reality and that is the reality of millions of people across this country. And even if you're not working that second job, so many of us are paying for childcare out of pocket, sometimes more than tuition costs for a student that wants to go to college. This country is what people are paying to take care of their infants or their young children. You know, it's hard to actually understand sometimes what universal childcare looks like. So can you tell us, as a policy wonk and someone who studied this, what would our lives look like if we had universal childcare in this country?
Well, we are truly the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't understand how very important this is. So let's kind of break it down for a moment. If we have a huge potential part of our workforce that isn't able to work because they have childcare challenges that they can't overcome, we are losing an enormous economic benefit to the country's economic bottom line. If we have adults who desire to work and who want to contribute to their own family economy and therefore to the GDP of this country, and they can't afford childcare, not only do they lose, but we lose on their talent and the economic benefit that we would receive from them being a part of the workforce. So other countries have understood that it's short-sighted not to make an investment in making sure that people who want to work can work. We do have some companies in this country that have really led on this issue where the government has failed to lead. And one of those great examples is Salesforce. Mark Benioff, of course, founded Salesforce and began to look at his own company's values when it came to pay equity, when it came to childcare and making sure that his employees could afford it. And he found that by making the investment in equitizing the pay of women and also making sure that he was providing affordable quality childcare at his work sites, he reaped an enormous economic benefit himself because those investments paid off, not just in the long term, but in the short term with the retention of employees that they'd invested in and trained. We have to look at this as a country in the same way, that investing in making sure that we subsidize the cost of childcare for people who want to work actually creates a positive return for us in the end. And I'm really thrilled that soon to be President Biden has actually made this a very important part of what he wants to achieve. And I know with Kamala Harris at his side, it's going to happen. And how amazing that finally we're going to see a presidential administration move forward such an important investment and such an important value, right? The value of making sure that we are investing in people who want to be productive on our behalf and making sure that their families are secure and happy. The other thing that's really important, though, is that we also pay childcare workers as they should be paid. Right now, childcare workers across this country, most of them aren't even earning minimum wage. And a lot of childcare workers actually have college degrees. But imagine what it could look like if we paid a childcare worker in a way that truly set a value for the important job that they're doing. Because a big part of this is how well we're caring for our children. Are we developing safe, happy, well-educated kids who are then also going to become an important, productive part of who we are as a country, not only with our economy, but our identity and our values and our happiness factor. All of that is so important. And again, soon to be President Biden has really made that a major tenet of what he hopes to do to try to solve some of the childcare challenges in this country. Other countries have done this. It's a no-brainer for them. They understand that it's part of making sure they have a productive workforce, and we can do it here.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I went to Switzerland. Actually, I was a delegate for the International Labor Organization for the United States. And people couldn't believe from other countries in Europe that we didn't have universal childcare. In most other countries in Europe, right, it starts at age 1 or 1.5, and actually people have parental leave until that time to be able to take care of their children. And so it is such a wild idea and totally unfair that in the richest country in the world that we're not giving parents and working moms, especially, the tools to be able to be successful and also be there for their kids. The value of time is so critical. So we're really excited about the change in administration. We were really excited that we won Congress. Of course, we were very sad that you were not part of that, but we're going to talk a little bit about that and what happened in Texas. But that the Senate is now also in the hands of Democrats. So we have Congress, the Senate, and the White House aligned. Maybe a short period when we can really push a lot of agendas. And we have a righteous mama agenda that we want to see enacted, right? We want universal childcare. We want to close the terrible pay gap between men and women, especially women of color and men, maternity leave. And then we also just had these wild and painful numbers come out around unemployment, what people are calling the she-cession, where we lost 140,000 jobs, 100% of them were lost by women, right? I had to go back and read the figures to actually make sure twice that was really what happened, because it was just so astounding, just the impact on women.
And so many women of color too, right, Christina?
Mm-hmm. And mostly all women of color, as Muna said, right? And so what's your hope for the Biden administration and this Congress about that righteous mama agenda? What do you actually hope they're going to be able to get done?
I really believe that this is going to be one of the most important pieces of policy that this administration focuses on. And, I know other Democratic presidential administrations have talked about this. They've done some work around the edges of it. But I truly believe that the Biden-Harris administration is going to make this a really important major focal point of what they do. And by doing so, will elevate all of us. There's that old saying that when women do better, we all do better. And it's not just a merely trite thing to say. It's absolutely true. There have been a number of studies about the impact that women's participation in the workforce have had on the economic bottom line for this country. And I'll give you just a quick example of that. When women were given in 1972 and 1973 the right to control their decisions about when and whether they have children through two important Supreme Court cases, one that provided the ability for single women to be able to access contraceptive care. And then, of course, the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973 that provided women with the right to choose what they would do with their own reproductive autonomy. Those two decisions led to a great increase of women's full-time participation in the workforce. And the consequence of that participation raised our GDP tremendously. In fact, just the growth of women's participation in the workforce has been attributed to being able to pay for Social Security and Medicare combined. Just that added participation of women in the workforce. So think about where we are now. As you said, Christina, women have borne the greatest brunt of what's happened economically as a consequence of COVID, suffered the greatest job losses, suffered the greatest responsibility of making sure that their kids are being educated while not able to go to school, and trying so hard to make sure that they're holding their families together and doing everything they can for their kids to continue to be happy and successful. The toll that women have borne in this pandemic has been very great. So to have an administration that says we're going to do everything we can to move women forward, to elevate their ability not only to succeed for themselves and their families, but to understand that the bottom line benefit that women provide to this economy cannot be overstated. And that if we don't do our part to make sure that we're investing in it, we are shorting our own opportunities to succeed. And we're shorting our ability, honestly, to pay for so many of the things that are important, and particularly right now, where we are trying to make sure that we're keeping businesses afloat, that we're keeping individuals afloat and their families secure in their homes and with food security. All of that is coming at a cost. And we're going to have to make sure that we do everything we can to get our economy running on all positive, powerful engines that we can. And that must include making sure that women are succeeding as much as they possibly can.
You kind of help. I think you've sort of actually answered my next question, but I'm going to frame it up a little bit differently. Because in this podcast, we're exploring how we build the world for our kids. I think universal childcare is a critical part of it, as is universal healthcare. And people are always, there's always the question, or this always seems like the question, how do we pay for it? But how do we pay for it? We find ways to pay for all sorts of things. And we carry the cost of our healthcare system. We carry the cost of not supporting childcare needs or having a strong public education system in some cases, and not making college affordable. There's a cost that we carry to all of that. So I wonder if you could talk about like, how do we think about this in the costs that we carry versus how do we pay for programs that will make us all better and will help deliver this world for our kids. Does that make sense? Even?
Sure. No, it's a great question, Martha. It goes back to the old Ben Franklin saying, right, about being penny wise and pound foolish. And again, other countries have come to understand that making investments in these areas have reaped a long-term economic benefit for them. If we have people who desire to be in the workforce, who could be a talented contributor to our workforce, and they're being constrained because we either haven't invested in making sure that they can get a good education, or we haven't invested in making sure that they can adequately care for their children while they go to work, if we haven't invested in making sure that they can be paid equitably so that they can then put more money back into the economy, then we are being penny wise and pound foolish. And, there are many economic studies that have demonstrated this, and that these investments actually will reap long-term economic benefits for this country if we will merely make sure that we prioritize the importance of doing these things.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is primarily in the way of us being able to get that done?
It's the ugliness of partisan politics, right? It's that it's too easy in a soundbite to say to someone, why should the government be spending X, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't talk to people about what that looks like in the long term. We don't talk with people about why that kind of an investment actually saves them money in the long run. A great example of that is just the conversation that we have about universal health care, right? We have universal health care right now. And that universal health care is that any person can show up in an emergency room, and a hospital cannot, under the law, turn them away if they have a medical need. That is hugely costly. So we do provide universal care. We just provide it in the most expensive way possible. And it would actually save us so much money if we would invest in people's healthcare on the front end. But for people to really understand that and to see that that's the right approach to take, they have to, of course, have the information that helps them to see that. And so often, politicians on the other side of the aisle from where I stand take advantage of turning people off to such ideas by convincing them actually that these are costs, not investments.
And the truth of the matter that we already all, like you said, we already all pay for it. It's just privatized. So it's put on individual families, individual parents to figure out how they pay for, right? And I'm sure every mom on here that's listening, or every parent that's listening, that when you have your first child and you kind of sit down and do the calculations of, well, I have to get back to work because one, we have no parental leave by law, right? If you are lucky to work in a place where you do have that. And, oh, I'm going to need to go back to work. And how much is it going to cost me? I mean, you're looking at bare minimum, like $600 a month, probably more like $1,800 up to $2,000 a month to get childcare for your little people, right? Like our most valuable, precious little people that we love so much. And so it's really expensive, as we all know, and kids don't get the quality care perhaps that we want them to have if we can't afford it. And then the people doing it aren't treated with the value and care that they deserve. And there is a better way. There's a clear way that works in other countries, and we're just choosing not to do it. Because I also think the other thing, right, is partisan politics. And we have a bunch of men in office that many of them have great wives that take care of their kids for them. And they don't know how hard it is actually to do this kind of work. And they're not from working in middle-class backgrounds where a lot of people have to pay for this out of pocket. So I love the idea of us just coming together as a country and deciding, you know what, our kids are really valuable. Our families are really valuable. And what's more precious than anything is being able to spend time with them. Because to me, it's an investment in our economy, but it's also an investment in our family and our kids and being able to be there. I'm wondering what you think, because the right wing is always talking about family values, and yet they're economically forcing people to not be able to be with their children because they have to work that other job like you had to, when you wanted to be there for your child, probably, instead of having to waitress at night with everything else you were doing.
There's no question about it. I mean, if we really wanted healthy families and healthy people, which I truly, very strongly believe creates a healthier country, a healthier economy, we have to think about how well adjusted people in our communities are in terms of making sure that we have the greatest opportunity to be well as a society, whether we're talking about decreasing crime, whether we're talking about making sure that people are realizing their full economic potential, whether we're talking about making sure that we're growing civic-minded people who care for each other and truly do remove some of that pressure, right, from the government having to do that. All of that is wrapped up in making sure that people can raise healthy and whole children. My greatest regret, I guess, although I don't really know that regret is the right word for it because I didn't have a choice. But my greatest upset about my early life and my daughter Amber's early life was that I could not give her the security that she needed. There's no greater guilt in the world. And I'll never set it aside of what it means to not be with your child, knowing that you, more than any other person in the world, is exactly who they need. And when you're in a situation like that, and you're just doing the very best you can to survive. And in my mind, my only way that I could pull us out of poverty was to try as hard as I could to advance my earning potential. Not only did I make sacrifices in that moment and in those years, but my daughter made sacrifices in that moment and in those years. And having raised two girls 6 years apart under very different economic conditions, I can tell you that the ability to raise a child with the time and the security that can be provided to them if you are economically secure versus not, it's just night and day. And I'm so thankful that Amber grew to be a strong and secure human being, but I know it so easily could have gone the other way. And I certainly saw her having struggles in her young life that my second daughter 6 years later didn't have. And that's just the fact of what it looks like when you're trying to raise a child with the kinds of pressures and constraints that exist for all working parents, but particularly for single parents, and particularly where childcare is such a challenge.
It's, it makes me think about my own kids, and my wife and I both, we are together, we work, we are like very lucky to be financially secure, but we also both have to work to live in Austin the way that we live in Austin. And our kids, as a result, have been in, like they started childcare when they were 3 months old. And during this pandemic, is the first time that we've had them home for this long, and that we've been together for this concentrated amount of time. And it's been beautiful that we've gotten to have that experience in the midst of all of this, while there's so much trauma for so many people. And I'm really aware of the fortune of that. But also, man, what a bullshit deal that this is the first time that my wife, who works in tech, feels safe, secure enough in her role at work to be like, yeah, my kids are home. I got to hop off this meeting to take care of something. But that was not, and that's a very healthy culture that she is a part of. So we just expect impossible things for families in this country, and then tell them that they're crazy for missing it.
Yeah.
It's like,
and think of how, I know you recognize this, Martha, the great privilege that you have, right?
Enormous.
To be able to to work from home, to see this as an opportunity, actually,
right,
in your family's life. And yet there's so many people who can't work from home. You know, there are essential workers who are bagging our groceries, who are driving our buses, who are, you know, waiting on tables and doing, you know, doing laundry and dry cleaning, just so many of the things that have continued on regardless of the rampage of this virus. And childcare has become even more scarce, even more challenging. Our childcare workers have put themselves at even greater risk. And so it really has ripped wide open for all of us to see what the great divides in this country look like, and why it is that as a policy, we have got to be very thoughtful about making sure that everyone in our country is having an opportunity that isn't different, so vastly different as we're seeing, you know, revealed as part of this pandemic experience. And I certainly understand from my own experience, the great privilege that I sit in my life now. And I guess what we all ought to be striving toward, right, is when we have moments like this, watching, listening, having our eyes open to them, and being fully present to the unique challenges that many people in our country face, and doing everything we can to lessen the divide between the challenges that each of us share.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, on that note of doing everything we can to move things forward, we pulled one of your quotes, Wendy. It really spoke to me. Here's a quote: "The losses I've endured have taught me that I'm more powerful than the limitations of failed efforts." And, you know, to set some context, the recent runoffs in Georgia, where the voter turnout was 10 years in the making, which won us both of these Democratic Senate seats, right? That didn't happen overnight. And, you know, we know that you recently ran, and, you know, really wish that you were representing us right now. And I want to first say thank you for running and continuing to show up, because your efforts are directly going to contribute to turning Texas blue. I know it. I can feel it. And this is an important lesson for us to be teaching our children. You know, talk to us a little bit about what it was like to run and lose, but more importantly, tell us why it's important to keep showing up and being bolstered by this failure, because like there's a vision that you're moving towards, right?
Yeah, I hope so, Muna. And thank you for being a voice and working toward helping to make sure that happens, an active voice, a person of more action than talk, right? Deeds, not words. We do have to make sure that we are resilient enough to keep going, even in the face of failure, because the stakes are just too high. And the stakes can't be about us as individuals. They have to be about what we're doing for each other, and what we believe is the essential way to make sure that we can provide equal opportunity for everyone in this country. And the only way to assure that is to continue to fight in the face of failure. I now have been on the cover of Texas Monthly Magazine twice as the, I forget what they call it. It's not a nice term.
Is it the bum steer?
The bum steer. Thank you so much. Yeah. Second time in a row, not in a row, but the second time in my public service career that I've been on the cover of Texas Monthly Magazine receiving the bum steer. And both times it was in electoral efforts. First, my gubernatorial effort in 2014, and then, of course, my congressional effort of late. And it's infuriating to me, and honestly, kind of keeps me driven toward continuing to try to work on what we all hope to achieve here. We can't ridicule people for stepping up to the plate. We should be celebrating people who are willing to step up to the plate, swing that bat, and even if we miss, come back and try again. Because we aren't going to solve the problems of the state and of this country if we aren't willing, in the face of individual defeat, to come forward again for the collective good. And I just want to say that to every woman who may be listening right now. It is so easy, particularly for women, to be ridiculed for their failures. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden ran and lost and kind of got kicked in the teeth politically quite a few times. But no one ever talked about him as, being somehow a failed human being as a consequence of having done that, right? This sadly tends to be uniquely reserved for women who step up. And
no one ever says either that it shows that men can't win, that people are
right.
ready for a man in leadership.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I just think, we're all bigger than that because we know we have to be, right? If we don't continue to fight, the people that we're fighting for are going to be the ultimate losers in this war. It isn't about us as individuals. It's about the long-term future that we hope to realize for every person in this country. And so if you are a person listening to this podcast who has put it on the line and not succeeded in your immediate goal, please don't think of that as individual failure. Be so proud of yourself that you were willing to try something hard. I tell the young women that I've worked with over the last few years at Deeds Not Words that we have to really take pride in the fact that we're brave enough to put ourselves forward and to do hard things. And maybe that's something that you're doing in your education. Maybe it's something you're doing with your career. Maybe it's something that you're doing in the nonprofit world or in the political world, whatever that looks like for you. If you don't succeed the first time you try, or the second or the third or the fourth, just keep popping yourself back up and putting it out there again. Because the only way that we will move forward productively and proactively is to continue to keep trying. And when we don't have the immediate outcome that we hope to have, just take the greatest pride that you were the kind of person who was brave enough to step forward and try to do something hard. Because the vast majority of people don't know the glory of that, and of course the feeling of what it's like in defeat, as Theodore Roosevelt said in his very famous quote about what it means to get into the arena. And Christina, of course, you've done that now. You've moved yourself forward as a political candidate, and you didn't, achieve what you hoped to in that moment, but you achieved so much and you inspired so many people. And it's just the beginning. I know that for you, of what you're going to do in your future. And, all of us can point to things like that, right? That we've done in our lives. I just would say, keep going, keep trying, keep fighting.
Yeah, I think so many people, right, that first off, in Texas, the right wing took power over years and years. Republicans did, and they did it by running people and then losing. Right. And then you break through. In no state that has gone through these big transitions, Arizona, Georgia, Stacey Abrams didn't, there was some games and shenanigans played, but she is not the governor of Georgia right now. But her, along with many other people, kept chipping away. That to me, every decision, and I feel like this is how you make decisions too, Wendy, is like, there is no such thing as failure. Failure is not trying.
Right.
If I help chip away and help kick the door open, then that for others behind me, then that is success. The other thing I think people don't realize is that, again, states and politics and changing the guard takes some really great people running and losing
Yeah.
to then make it possible. So yeah, I don't see any failure. And you running and not being our congressional leader just makes me pissed that you're not there. But besides that, I see someone that was willing to have the guts and courage to run and run on the values that they believe in. And anybody that's willing to do that, in my mind, again, failure is not ever trying.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
And I think Muna also, before we were talking, I said, you can't win if you don't run, bitches. So go out there and run.
Exactly right.
Absolutely. And on that note, you mentioned this 2 times. Wendy, one of the things that's important to us is building the world for our kids and modeling what it looks like to show up and actually be doing the work, right? Like, we don't want folks at home to feel helpless. And so tell us a little bit about Deeds, Not Words. I know you've been part of this effort for a long time, spearheading it. And why are you doing it? And what do you hope to accomplish for our audience that doesn't know about this effort?
I always love to talk about the work that Deeds Not Words is doing with young women across the state. And of course, Christina is doing great work in this area as well. Both Christina and I know you believe this too, Muna, and Martha does as well. We believe very strongly that unless we can help make sure that a reflective, representative group of people in our state is being represented in halls of power, we'll never change things in a way that creates the just and equal world that we want to see. I know from being a young woman, showing up at a city council meeting when I was in my early 30s, speaking out on an issue that mattered to me, how shaping a moment like that can be, what it can mean to a young person to be guided to a hall of power, to be encouraged to use the power that they already own. I always shy away from using the word empower because it intimates that we're giving power to someone. We all already have power, but we need some help in being guided in terms of how to use it. And that's our goal at Deeds, to make sure that high school and college age young women, particularly young women of color from every area of our state, is being given the tools and resources to show up, to bring their lived experiences forward, to speak their truth and their power in a way that helps to shape the kind of change that we want to see. And I've been so proud of the work that Deeds Not Words has done. I'm on the board still. I'm no longer part of the staff of the organization, but I was really proud to leave it in the hands of some amazing young women, most of whom are young women of color, who are leading it forward and who are embracing and creating the kind of policy change that they want to see. And in a time like this, as we begin this Texas legislative session, making sure that women who too often are on the receiving end of hostile legislation rather than on the proactive end of creating legislation that reflects and represents their values and priorities and daily lived experiences. It's really important that they're there. And I'm really proud of the work that so many of the young women who our organization has trained have accomplished as a result of their willingness to show up and be brave and put their voices in a place that they belong.
Yeah, absolutely. In sitting and listening to you and thinking about my own experiences, this pandemic has been experienced differently for people based on their gender, based on their socioeconomic status, based on their race. And when we think about where childcare could have played a part in being an equalizing factor, there's definitely an opportunity for improvement. I am excited that you've been doing the work to have equal representation because it's necessary. I don't know if y'all hear that. My kid is pounding on the door and wants to come in. And I know that while there's so much work to be done, that you've been doing the work to fill, I know, at least our halls and our Texas legislator with more women and more voices. And you've been doing that work for a while. So thank you for that. I think the thing I'm really going to take away from this conversation is this quote about do not ridicule people for stepping up to the plate. You got to step up to the plate if you want to play and win, and you keep showing up, right? Like, we're nowhere near the ninth inning. We're just getting started. And I'm so excited about the opportunity and the potential that women are going to bring to this conversation, and specifically around universal childcare. And that's just the start. So thank you so much for joining us, Wendy. Appreciate your time and all the inspiration.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being with you all. Thanks for the honor to be a part of your podcast, and keep up the great work.
So y'all, actually met Wendy Davis for the first time at the Austin Women's March, the one where like 55,000 people showed up the day after the 2016 election. And I remember feeling so much energy that day. And then she was actually standing next to me holding the banner as we were marching. And I kept looking over at her. And it gave me so much energy because I know her journey hasn't always been a straight line, but she kept showing up and she was holding that banner. And I found so much symbolism in that, to be standing next to her and standing with another Black woman and standing with, I think, a gay pastor. And we were moving forward. And that feeling really came up for me today as we were talking to her, because the movement is not about an individual. The movement is about the collective outcomes we're trying to drive, and everybody's efforts make a difference. And wow, how beautiful that everyone's able to have universal childcare at some point because of all these people's efforts over time. So I'm really grateful for her to keep showing up, because it takes all of us to make that difference, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh God, can you imagine? I just really, really hope that the new administration and Congress and the Senate are just going to push forward the policies that we absolutely need. Like, no, to me, there is no debate. We need universal childcare. We also need paid parental leave, because that's part of the being able to take care of your child. But I also think, from talking to Wendy, is just like, we need more people that have lived the experience of being a 19-year-old single mom that had to waitress, had to go to school, and have another job. And I think what I also carried was something, Martha, you and her talked about, was the constant guilt, right? Like the guilt and pressure. I mentioned being at that International Labor Organization, and the guy sitting next to me was from Sweden, and he said, I don't know how your government does what it does to families, right? And it's just like, to me, it's not even like just a question of the economic cost. It's a value set. Like, I believe our country is stronger when families are stronger. And there is the value of time, which is so, so, so precious, for you to be able to be there for your kids and not have the stress of thinking and juggling about how you pay for it. Is this quality childcare? If my childcare, you have a childcare provider and then something happens and you have to find a new one completely all on your own, or they're full, or there's not anyone close to your house. I mean, just like the pressure we put on families and parents, and especially single working moms, is obscene. It's an obscenity, and we have to change it. And so, goddamn, I hope we do change it this up in the next like few months, that it's top of the priority agenda.
Oh my God, me too. It's so, I want to say funny, but it's not actually funny. We have been so washed in this scarcity mindset that, we don't have enough to do this. There's never enough time. There's never, the deserving of, really time, Christina, I agree. And the resources for that, because those wind up being the same thing. We are chasing resources, or the things that take our time away. And I just feel like if we can shift from cost to investment when we're thinking about these things, like Wendy was talking about cost, there is the cost of this, and then there is the investment in kids, in families, in futures, in education. We have the opportunity to choose to invest and nurture all of these things. And I do think that we would be better served by having a lot of different representation in the halls of power, because they don't see it the same way. They haven't experienced the same things. They have not, you know, had to change the diapers in the car on the way to drop off at the parents' house to then go to the job waiting tables. Like that lived experience is critical. Yeah. And I just really appreciate the hell out of the fight in Wendy. And she really, when she did her stand at the Capitol, it was the first time that I re-engaged in politics after I had very intentionally turned them off, because I thought they were so ugly and so divisive, partisan, whatever, fill in the blank. But who am I to walk away from it, right? Like, it affects our lives every day. It touches our lives every day. And so for me, hearing her speak so eloquently for 13 hours in the Capitol really got my attention and brought me back in, and I haven't left since. So
yeah, that's
Go
so
team.
awesome to hear, Martha, right? Like the trajectory of pushing and pushing, like we're, you know, we know this podcast is for people in other states, but look, like, it's not just because we're Texans and we think that our state is the center of the universe, but it is probably a little bit. But if you change Texas, you change the whole country.
Everything.
We are the second largest economy, the second most populous state. And Republicans know that even though Texas, our demographics, who we are, actually doesn't match who are in political power, they are doing everything possible to try and hold on to power. But that day of reckoning is coming, and it's going to come because courageous, good people ran, even when the political stars didn't align and say it was possible, but them running makes it possible for the next person. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And I have one more thing. Do you remember when the Republicans did take back power, the way that they did it was very specifically by targeting women's seats. Mm-hmm. So seats held by women, Democratic women. It was a very intentional move. And until 2018, it had been 30 years that we had that many women serving in the Texas legislature.
Wow.
So they know the power of women.
So we got work to do, and we're going to go enact that righteous agenda, that righteous mama agenda that we all want and deserve, because our family, our children, they're the greatest assets this country has, and we just want them invested in like they deserve.
And we're going to turn Texas blue.
Eso. That means yes, we can, or that's it.